All right, so let's talk about quality assurance. Uh, so, so we've been mostly focusing on the tasks that software engineers, ourselves, developers, focus on, right? On the designing part of gathering the requirements, and our interactions with the other folks like the business analysts and the project managers, and how is it that we run projects and how we and keep them on track. And but certainly there's plenty of other folks that participate in the software development lifecycle. And one of the folks that we're going to be working very close with is the QA engineers. Right? These are the folks that take our code and try to identify any flaws to see if they meet the requirements that were specified, or even challenge requirements based on once they're exercising the existing implemented features, they get a chance to actually go through it and challenge it, right? And say, well, I know this might meet the specification, right? It might not break any requirements, but they might identify some usability issues, right? And they might have some input onto improvements in the quality of the application. The business of quality assurance has changed over the years and has evolved quite a bit. Today, we expect QA engineers much more than just exercising manually and trying to break our applications. They have a more proactive participation where they're brought on very early on in the phase where they are part of the requirements gathering. They're designing some of the tests early on, and then testing our implementations as early as possible, right? So a lot of techniques and best practices have been evolved and identified that are specific to the QA effort, and that's what we're going to be describing. Right? They're responsible for constantly questioning the methodology and improving the ways that they test. They're responsible for coming up with standards for the overall organizations and how is it that we are going to manage the testing, how we're going to document it, how we're going to track the bugs and whatnot. Right? So they're embedded very tightly into typical applications. Although it changes. The roles of the QA engineer is fairly varied from organization to organization. So it's quite different from one place to the other. In some organizations, there's a lot of contentions between the QA folks and the development folks. Right? In other organizations, they're working hand in hand, and we have to make an effort, to include or to have the QA participate in the development phase. And not make an effort not for the relationship to be contentious. Oftentimes it's very easy for a developer to perhaps feel somewhat challenged or to question some of the methodologies that the QA engineers might use. And instead, we have to identify that we're all part of the same team, that we're all working together, right? We're all adults. And certainly it's their job of the QA engineer to point out any flaws and for us not to take that any way personally or it's part of the process to constructively work together towards a better product. Ideally, the QA engineer is today in the as technology is pervasive throughout the software development lifecycle, that the QA engineer has some cross-functional skills that perhaps were not as much some decades ago. But today we would expect the software engineer to be fairly versed in some of the software engineering techniques, that they understand what a database is, they understand what RESTful services are, that they understand some of the scalability issues, that they're fairly well versed in in software development lifecycle, the production environments, and the Jenkins, continuous integration, that they're very well versed in the entire understanding of the effort of delivering software. In addition, ideally they're also well versed in understanding what the business is, right? That they understand what the requirements are. That they can push back on some of those requirements and have some input into those into the shaping of those requirements. So yeah, ideally, folks, QA engineers have the software engineering knowledge that they understand what the challenges that us software engineers and developers face, implementing some of these things, right? Some of the technical skills that ideally, obviously, one of the more visible skills that we identify with QA engineers is that they're going to manually exercise our application, right? They're going to sit there and they're going to go through all our pages. They're going to click every button, scroll everything, right? They're going to select every drop-down menu. They're going to type garbage into our input field, right? Trying to break our application, right? Certainly, that's a skill that needs a lot of detail-oriented, right? Trying to identify what the edge cases might be, and especially if they know their business, right? What certain input might cause our application to misbehave. But beyond that much visible manual testing, today we expect much more from the QA engineer. We expect them to be able to start automating a lot of these manual tests, right? So that we can run them repeatedly, right? That we can be confident that we can identify any regressions if something used to work but no longer does it work, and do really quick smoke tests that we can quickly see if any new changes, any new features have introduced any misbehavior. So certainly we are looking for that kind of skill in technical skill for automating and programming and scripting. Business, certainly it's a good skill to have for QA engineers so that they can better understand what the requirements are, what the scope of the business of what we're working on, that they can introduce their tests as part of the planning phase, and that and always point out that us developers oftentimes are too we underestimate how much the testing effort might be, right? Of the quality assurance effort might be. So oftentimes it's the QA's responsibility to push back and say, hey, in your planning, make sure that you leave off a point or two that we do the manual testing. That there's going to be meetings that you have to meet with us, and there's going to be we have to create all this test plans, right? And that you meet with us and create perhaps a prototype that we can start working on through some of the manual tests and the test plans, and we have to add it to the test plan. So oftentimes it's very good that they understand the business and they can push back on some of the planning efforts that we might be working on. Also, they will be very proactive on maintaining the list of defects or bugs that they have reported, right? That they manage the life cycle of these bugs, that they're assigning it to the correct person, that it goes back to the QA once they're fixed, that they repeat the test to verify that the fix has actually made it through, and then close those bugs and just be responsible for the life cycle of all these defects that they report as they exercise our application. Also very important that they have some DevOps skills, that they understand that they're participating in a continuous integration effort, that there's many environments that are being maintained. They're not only a development environment, but there's a QA environment, there's a demo environment, there's a staging environment, and understand that there's a whole life cycle of the product as it moves through multiple environments, right? They might be called upon to understand how to set them up and integrate their tests into as part of the deployment and the continuous integration effort. So it's very useful if they are skilled or understand these challenges, right? As part of as a team or the organization understands these challenges, and that also they're skilled on defining and maintaining and evolving processes, right? That certainly the project management has its own process of Scrum and meetings and whatnot. They too also need to be knowledgeable of their own processes of how is it that they're going to manage their defects, how they're going to communicate this with the rest of the community, and also evolve and identify how to improve the process going forward.